Hey there, awesome artists! This is Miss Beth with Discover Art Studio. Today we're going to be painting this acrylic project, Making Waves Orca Family. You'll find the supply list underneath the video in the description. I'm going to be painting mine on a 9 by 12 stretched canvas. You're going to need a cup of water, a paper towel or two. I'm going to paint my background with a 1-inch flat brush. The paint colors that we're going to need today are a teal blue, white, a royal or primary blue, and black. I'm going to start my painting in the upper right-hand corner with white blended through the teal, the royal blue, and the black down to the bottom of the canvas. Get your paintbrush wet with some water and then dry it off on your paper towel. I'm going to scoop up some white paint and start in the upper right-hand corner making circles with the flat part of my paintbrush. Start in the center with a smaller circle and simply get wider and wider and wider with your circles until we have a large white circle in the upper right-hand corner. We want to be sure we use enough paint to cover the canvas completely. After your white circle is as large as you'd like it to be, we're going to go ahead and get a scoop of the teal blue and add it to our canvas. Watch where I put the teal blue to begin with as we blend it in to the white. I'm going to go ahead and make a circle all the way around the white circle with the teal blue, up into the left-hand corner, coming down about 2 inches wide, and I'm just painting back and forth around the outside of that white circle. I'm also adding a bit to the upper right-hand corner. Continue to add that teal blue, and then I'm going to blend just a little ways into the white circle. We don't want to go up very far because we want our white circle to remain large. Get another scoop of the teal blue and continue with your blue circle down below where you've already painted. You'll notice that the teal is getting darker and darker the lower we go. We want to continue to paint in a circle until all of the canvas is covered. You can see I'm blending it into the white just a little bit, but we want that white circle to remain very large. I'm wiping the teal paint off of my paintbrush. You don't have to rinse it out. And now I'm going back with a bit of white paint into where the teal blue meets the white, just to blend it in a little better. I'm blending out into the teal a little bit farther. And that should get our white and teal part down really well. Wipe your paintbrush off again on your paper towel. You don't have to rinse it out. And now I'm getting a scoop of the darker blue and putting it into the center of my paper plate paint palette. adding a touch of black until it's a dark midnight blue. Mixing the blue and a touch of black together to make it a dark midnight or navy blue, and I'm starting at the bottom of the canvas with our darkest blue color. I'm painting back and forth in very long strokes to be sure that that dark blue is covering up all of the canvas down at the bottom. And now I'm beginning to start a circle with the darker blue. The higher you go, the more of a circle you're going to be painting your strokes in. I'm still painting with that navy or midnight blue, and then as I get closer to the teal, I'm wiping my paintbrush off and adding just the blue that is a royal or primary blue, the darker blue. I'm adding a little bit more and continuing to paint in just a slight arc or a slight circle down at the bottom of that canvas. I'm adding just the darker blue now to finish up our arcs of circles, and I'm going to be blending it into that teal blue color once I get the canvas all filled in. We want to get rid of that harsh edge so it's a nice blended watery scene for our whales to be swimming in. So I've blended that blue down into the navy blue and adding a little bit more. I'm going to want to start blending it up into the teal. I do just a little bit because we don't want to get rid of all that teal blue. And then I wipe my paintbrush off and I add a little bit more teal paint to my paintbrush and blend it right on top of the place where that dark blue and the teal blue come together. And you can see it's blending out into a nice faded blue color. At this point, you can look at your painting and see if there's any place that you want to blend it together a little more. It helps sometimes to completely wipe the paint off of your paintbrush and just blend it together with a dry brush. And now we've blended that all together and we have a nice blended watery scene for our whales to be swimming in. Once I get the front part of the canvas painted, I'm going to move on to painting the edges of my canvas. A stretched canvas is really fun to hang on the wall. When the edges are painted, it acts like its own little frame. So once I get the front exactly the way I want it, I'm going to let it dry and then paint the edges of my canvas. The edges of the canvas will be painted the same color as the front of the canvas. So you can see at the bottom here, I'm going to take that navy midnight blue and paint along that bottom edge. You can sort of hold the canvas underneath to support it while you're painting. And then once I get the bottom painted with that dark blue, I'm going to flip it around to the side. And you can see we're going to go through the same blended blues that we did for the front of the canvas. So I'm going to start at the bottom since I still have that navy blue and paint the navy blue up the side. And then when the colors switch, I'm going to go ahead and switch the color that I'm painting with on the side of the canvas. So we want to switch to the royal blue and then switch to the teal blue. And then as we get to the top of the edge of the canvas, we're going to switch to a very light teal blue. And then we'll just blend it all together and that edge will be painted. You can do the same with the top and the opposite side of the canvas, and then we're going to let it dry. Now that our canvas is dry, we're going to add our Orca family. You will find a template file that's downloadable in the description below this video to print off and cut out your Orca family. Once I have the whales cut out, I'm going to lay them on top of the canvas where I'd like them to be. This is where I positioned them before. If you like, you could also turn the canvas sideways and position them that way, kind of swimming together. Flip it over and they're swimming the same way. This is your art and you can do it any way you want. I'm going to go ahead and put my whales swimming down towards the bottom of the ocean. First, the grown-up whale, and then the little whale. You could do it this way or put the grown-up whale down lower and put the little whale on top. And once you get your whales exactly where you want them to be, we're going to trace around the outside edge of the whales, both of them all the way around the outside. I'm just going to use a graphite pencil and just tracing around this outside edge. Once I trace around the outside edge of each whale, I'm going to draw in the spots, one on its stomach, one on its chin, and then another one that's very small right behind the eye. I'm going to use my template to show me where the spots should go, and then I'm just going to draw those spots right into my whale drawing. So you can see right here I'm drawing the spot that comes around on its stomach, and I'm going to add the one under the chin and the one behind the eye. I'll do the same thing with the small whale. After I trace the outside of the whale, I'm going to draw those spots in, one on the stomach, one under the chin, and one behind the eye. Now that I have my whales drawn on there, I'm going to start painting with a small brush. The size is in the description below the video. I'm going to start with the white paint first. And so I'm taking my small brush and I'm going to paint in those 3 spots on the smaller whale. I work from the top to the bottom of the painting so I don't lay my hand in the wet paint of the larger whale while I'm painting the small one. So I'm going to do the small one first. And I'm just going to fill in those 3 spots, one on the stomach, one under the chin, and one behind the eye, with the small paintbrush and the white paint. Take your time and just trace around the outside edge of the spots, covering up your pencil line, taking your time. You can always stop this video, pause it, rewind it, and just go at your own pace. You can see I'm just painting in the edges of the spots and then filling in the center. Use enough paint to cover the canvas completely, but not so much that there is a bunch of really thick areas of paint that are going to be difficult to get them to dry. We just want to fill it in with a nice smooth layer. And once I paint the small whale in, I'm going to do the spots on the larger whale. I'm moving down to the larger whale now, using that small brush and the white paint. I'm painting in the spot on the larger whale's stomach. Just tracing around the outside edge of the spot and then getting a bit more paint and filling it in. And we'll move on to the spot under the chin. And there's the one behind the eye. By the time I get that whale painted, the smaller whale spots are mostly dry. So I'm going to go back and add just one more kind of light coat to places that look like they're not completely filled in. We want that white paint to be very bright. You can also stop at this point and let that white paint dry and then go back and add another coat if you like. Just going to make sure those white spots show up really well. Once the white spots are finished, I'm going to go ahead and rinse my brush out, dry it off on the paper towel, and get the black paint, and I'm going to paint the rest of the whale. So I'm starting with the small whale, that dorsal fin on its back, and I'm just following along my pencil lines with the black paint. Just follow along. It's kind of like drawing another line with your paintbrush. And I'm going to fill in the black part of the whale. And we're going to paint all along its back, the tail. When I get next to the white part, I'm going to go very carefully to make sure that I don't cover up the white. and just paint that whole whale in. Okay, I'm ready to start on the larger whale down below. So I'm going to be painting this one as well with that small paintbrush and the black paint. And I'm just going to start up here at its tail, following along my pencil lines, and then just filling in the spaces as I go. I'm taking my time to be sure that I've got a nice clean edge. It kind of shows the smoothness of the skin of the whales, and also going slow and carefully to be sure I don't cover up that white paint. So let's finish filling in the larger whale. Okay, we're down to the very end of the painting now. The last thing that we're going to do is add some highlights to the whales to show the reflection of the sunlight that's coming through the water and kind of bouncing off of their skin. So we're going to be doing that with our teal blue color. We're going to take our teal blue with a very small paintbrush and take a bit of the paint with a little bit of white and kind of put it in a little pile on your plate. So we've got a light teal blue. You can mix it about anywhere you want on your plate. I want to be sure that it's not too light. So you can see I sort of moved over into the darker teal to make sure that it was a very strong teal blue, but not too light. And then once I get a color that I like, I'm going to add several brushes full of water to kind of thin the paint out to sort of the consistency of milk. We want it to be not thick like it came right out of the bottle. And so once I get that paint really thinned out, you can see I'm wiping all the excess off on my paper towel. And then I'm going to take just a little bit of that teal blue paint and I'm going to go along the edges of the whale, the fins, the top of the whale, the top of its head, wherever the light would be kind of shining down on it and highlighting the whale. So the top of those fins, and I'm just adding some really thin, light teal blue lines right on top of that black. And once I get it on there, if I feel like it's a little bit too heavy, I can take my finger and sort of wipe it off, blend it in a little bit. That teal blue will be a really nice color for the reflection, especially on that smaller whale right in front of that white part of the light circle that's coming down through the water. So I'm just adding a light blue line to its tail, the fins, kind of down underneath the fin because the light is still shining on that area. Just very light and very thin. You want to make sure your paint is thin enough that it doesn't sit on there really heavy. We almost want to see the black kind of shining through the blue. It's sort of transparent. Now I'm adding some lines to the top of that fin. And I'm just going to fill in a little bit wider on the back of the fin because it's closer to the light. And then we're just going to add some along the top of its head and along its back. So I'm kind of washing in that blue right over the top of the black just to add some shimmer and some highlights to it. Along the top of its head. And then I'm just kind of fading it in a little bit with my finger if I need to. We just don't want it to be very heavy. Just a little bit of shimmer. And I'm going down to do the fin. That fin is catching the light shining through the water. So I'm going to paint almost the whole thing in. But you can see the blue is very thin and the black is coming through it. It's very thin. Once I get the black painted with that very thin teal blue, I'm going to add some to the white part as well. So I'm tracing a line along this small whale's stomach to kind of separate it from that white circle behind it. So we'll paint the whale just with this very pale, light teal blue. It's pretty thin again, just drawing a line along the edge of its stomach and then kind of blending it a little bit into the white part as well. And then that will set it apart from that white circle behind it. And then I'm doing a little bit on that white patch under its chin. Add a little bit of shadow to the white. And I'm going to go ahead and leave that spot behind where the eye is going to be, just that very bright white. Once I do the small whale, I'm going to move down and do the same thing with the larger whale. Just adding a little bit of this very thin, very pale teal blue. Here we go. We're going to put some highlights on the larger whale's tail. So where the light is shining down through the water, we're going to paint along the top edge of the tail and along this whale's back. I'm going to keep it very thin. See, I'm kind of blending it in with my finger so it doesn't get too heavy. Paint a little bit along the edge of this other fin. Then its tail will be done. Now we're moving on to that dorsal fin. So both edges and the top of this fin is catching the light shining through the water. So we're going to paint both of those edges with a thin, very light blue line. Looks like I've jumped back to the tail there, adding a little bit of blue highlight to the bigger part of its tail and along its back. And then the underneath, we're going to leave, that kind of dark black. I'm blending it in with my finger. And then adding just a little bit more of that very light teal blue. So we'll continue to add that teal blue to the fin of the whale and along the top of its head. Also that fin that's closest to us will have some highlights on it as well. Going along the top of the head. I also want to remind you that at any point you can pause or stop or rewind the video So you can just take the directions at your own pace, paint this at your own pace. Once we get the top of the head done, we're going to add some highlights to this fin that's closest to us. And the one in the background there, we'll leave that one dark. And then a little bit more to the body of the whale. Any place that the light would naturally be falling on the whale as it's shining through the water. We are very nearly done with our Orca family. The last thing that we're going to need to do is add a tiny white eye on each whale. On your template, you can see the placement of those eyes. And we're actually going to use the back of our brush, the hard end of the brush, to make those little white circles for the eyes. So when you're ready, you can flip your brush around and dip it just very slightly in that white paint, and then place a dot for the eye right in front of those white ovals on the head. I'm just going to finish up some shadows on the white here with that same very thin, very light teal blue. And there we go. So now I'm showing you the back of the paintbrush. I dip it ever so slightly in that white paint and then just add a tiny eye right in front of that white oval. Here we go. And that is it. Your Orca family painting is finished. I hope that you've enjoyed doing this project, and I will see you again in our next video.